And I think it kind of ties to Lawton, what you said earlier, is just there's so much change happening so quickly, and we don't know the result. We don't know the end, right? Everything could shift in a second, and all humans could be cut out of interacting with AI, and we have no control at all. I don't know what's going to happen, but you know what I mean. I never felt such dynamic, woo, wake up and everything's different from yesterday as I feel right now. Well, I'd love to switch gears a little bit, and I have to talk about the elephant in the room because everybody's talking about it, and that is AI. And I would love to hear your take on utilizing AI in UX research. Any thoughts?
And that's a huge topic.
It is.
I think I think two of the things that Thomas and I've been thinking about with regard to AI is there's on the one hand using AI as part of what we do as researchers. And then on the other hand, there's applying what we do to AI because this is an emerging technology, right? It's not in its most mature form. I don't think that anyone expects the chatbot interface to remain the dominant interaction style forever here. So, which of those were you more interested in exploring first?
Yes. I
Let's
love
talk
both
about
sides. Let's go both ways. Absolutely.
let's start with using AI for what we do, and then we can come full circle talk about
Yeah,
using what we do for the design of AI.
love it.
The easy headline statement is that in terms of using AI for UX design or research or whatever, is in its most nascent phase where, broadly speaking, there are folks who are generally interested in, kind of tinkering with AI, figuring out where it fits well into workflows. That's where it's at now, and that's not surprising. A lot of technologies, any tool that comes out kind of starts with a few folks who like to try out new things. We're early on the professional adoption curve in that way. But we're hearing this question so much. We're hearing, okay, how are you using AI in your workflows? Probably very soon you're going to start to see maybe a company or two start to really formally say, like, this is how you're going to use it. You've heard some CEOs say, I expect that everyone in this company uses AI. So I think that's an early precursor to there's going to be some teams who start to get really explicit about how, where in workflows, which AI tools, things, how they all come together. I don't know if it's going to be ops people who kind of lead that charge. I don't know if it's going to be managers who from on high say, all right, everybody, we've tested this out and this is the way we do it. But we're in this, like I said, early individual driven phase. Probably sometime in the next year or two, you'll see more formalized team dictated approaches to using AI for different phases of a project, whether that be helping you write screeners or helping you with analysis or whatever it is. So I think big picture, that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, I'm with you there, Thomas. I'm hearing a lot of, just like you said, use AI. Yeah, but like how exactly?
Yeah.
I'm trying it for a lot of different things, but it doesn't feel very research related. Uh, I have tried it for analysis a couple of times and it's hit or miss. I find the more I know about the data, the more I find it's a miss. And like what stood out to me as a researcher in my aha moments doesn't always come out when AI does a synthesis of the same data. I would love to hear more specific use cases that are successful. And it might be what you're alluding to, Thomas, in that in the year from now, they're going to be dictating specific ways to use it because it's been vetted and tested. And it's like, all right, we know it works for this.
Yeah. So let's talk about like what we found is useful on. I think got a few
Yeah.
examples of like things that we've done that work decently well.
Yeah, two things. First, I would zoom out a little bit. So, what is preventing us from getting those dictated use cases of this is what's vetted and what works? Partially, it's just that nobody's really doing the validation work that we've done in all of pretty much everything else that we do as researchers, right? We know you can use a relatively small sample of 5 users to get at this many usability issues that occur at this frequency because we've done the validation work, right? The same with quantitative methods, inspection methods, you name it. We haven't done that with anything with AI tools. And there's partly a good reason for that because it's continually changing, right? Every week or two, there's a new model that comes out and it's, oh, this one's 10 times better than everything that's been out there before. So I personally don't want to do that work and then have it be um, completely irrelevant next week. I think that's part of it. And then the other issue that's going on is we don't really know where this is going to end. There's a variety of possible outcomes here where, on the one end, we have a slightly more mature version of what we're using right now. So it's a tool that augments us. We're figuring out where exactly. And then there are the boosters who say, we're going to have artificial general intelligence in the next 5 years. And that could be anything as simple as having an AI person on your team who's fully doing everything that you're doing, or the people who are really into this are describing it like the machine god, at which point, who's to say, right? So there's a lot of uncertainty just because of those two things. We don't know where this is going to end, and it's changing so quickly that we haven't done the validation work. That being said, I don't want to evade the question of like, how are we using it right now? I'll just start off. Maybe we can like rapid fire here. One that's on my mind is really just like wordsmithing. So I don't know if you've ever been writing a report of your research findings and you're like, all right, I'm going to write this down badly because I don't know how to say it. I find that using an LLM is actually a really good partner for that. You can say, this is what I'm trying to get at. Is there a better way of saying this? And maybe give me a couple of options. That's a great way to make your findings a little bit more understandable for your stakeholders.
Yeah, I love that approach. I definitely use that too. I've also heard that's really a great approach for someone who English is their second language and maybe writing
Mm,
in English is not their strength. And so using a tool like that to help them articulate their thoughts and clean up some of the grammatical errors is a really strong approach when it comes to writing. Thomas, your rapid
Yeah.
fire.
Yeah. I'm going to kind of cheat because mine's going to have like 3 quick ones all in a row. On the
Great.
theme of analysis, one thing that works not so well, there's a lot of emphasis right now on implementing tools to do thematic analysis automatically through AI in whatever research tool that you use. It doesn't always work so well. It does a lot of things like if your participants read instructions aloud on video, those tools really think that's a finding. They're like, oh, look at this great finding. And it's like, but yeah, they read the instructions. That's what we said in the instructions. Great. So that always, I could give more concrete examples, but generally that seems to be relatively superficial, find not so compelling things through using that. 2 things that seem to work pretty well though in analysis. First, I'll say is secondary desk research, at least in terms of pulling in things and starting to, at a very high level, organize them. Tools like deep research and something like Notebook LM are really good for finding and starting to put together quick briefs that you can then dive more into for your desk research. And then the final thing I'll say on kind of the analysis front is that we've actually successfully used AI to do some thematic coding on very specific keywords, right? Redline with our jobs research. In the past, we had pulled thousands of job descriptions online, which are just giant walls of text. And we wanted to do a lot of analyses on them. For example, what level is this role? We trained AI to make a variable about what level the role is. Is it senior, the entry, intern, whatever it is? Very complex, very difficult, but we ended up making it work. So that's one thing in analysis I'll say AI is useful for. Back to you, Lawton.
Well, before we go back to
Oh,
Lawton,
yeah.
I want to say we are going to touch upon your research on the general job market. And I just want to clarify, are you establishing some codes and kind of in advance or maybe a little bit as you go along to apply to those job descriptions?
Exactly. The whole idea was this is how we want it to be coded. So we were telling it, this is exactly how things should be coded. These are the variables. These are the names and their different levels. Now you interpret all this different text and tell us what the results are for all these other observations. I think we ran through like a few different tests of that, right, Lon? But it's all guided by us.
Yeah.
We just saved time in terms of we didn't have to sit down with 1,000 different observations, 1,000 different, giant job posts and be like, okay, it did mention usability testing. It mentioned card sorting. It's a full-time role, part-time role. That would have just taken forever.
Cool. And to your point about synthesis and, stretching things a little bit, I'm with you. I find it almost overestimates some of the things like several people said. I'm like, no, one person said that. So let's not wait a minute. That's a whole different thing, right? Like, no, I think that was just one person who said that. All right,
It's
Lawton,
kind of
what else?
directional at best.
Right. And back to your secondary desk research, I am with you there. If you think about it, well, you both come from very strong academic backgrounds. So you were used to search tools for academia, right? Much more robust resources than somebody going on Google and just typing in something. And when you go onto Google, you still have to click into all these different articles and resources and be like, nope, that's not, yeah, that's helpful. Nope, this isn't helpful. But now it's collating that for you. And I do find that that is pretty helpful.
It's a great kickstart at the very least, if not extremely thorough at best.
Agreed. I did some research for onboarding. Here's an interesting little story. Why do people join a bank? Why did they pick a bank to start doing their business with? And most of it made sense, like, a place to put their money, a place to put their direct deposit, a place to pay bills. One of the bullet points was so they could get a job there. And I was like, I don't know about that. That seemed a little bit of a stretch to me. Maybe a few people, but I don't think if we're picking top 10 and this was number 6 reason, I don't think that's true.
I think that a lot of people don't really have a great, and this almost bleeds into the how we design for them. I don't think they have a really great mental model of how these things are actually working or where the data is coming from or what is it actually doing. And I'm not saying that you need to be an AI expert or have an intense technical understanding of the underpinnings, but if you recognize at a high level, in principle, what this is almost like a database of the internet that we can talk to, that it's using really advanced autocomplete to fill out a text. Is that something that would be useful for this use case? When you hold it up against that mental model, that starts to become obvious. Is it really good for telling me what the findings are? No, not necessarily, because it's going to be basically doing its best impression of what a great research report looks like. That's why it's saying several people said this, because a research report generally won't talk about one person all the time.
Right. So, what can we as researchers do to help inform or make better? I don't know if that's the right word. The AI tools. Is there anything that we can do?
I think the mental models one is one huge area of opportunity. I feel every couple of weeks there's some article or meme or something that goes viral. It's like, can you believe that ChatGPT did this? And again, if you understand how they work, it's yeah, that actually totally checks out that it would do that. Like, for instance, there was an article going around a few weeks ago. It was called like Diabolus Ex Machina. Maybe you saw this. And it was like this writer had plugged in several of her pieces and was trying to get like summaries written of it. The thing couldn't access the links. And so it was just making stuff up based on the links. Like, that's a known thing that they do. They will hallucinate and make up stuff because it sounds right and they're trying to give you useful information. So, as researchers, as designers, whatever we can do to give users a useful mental model that presents, yeah, this is how it's working, and this is what you can expect. If you give it these sorts of inputs, you can expect these sorts of outputs. Um, that's something that I think is sorely missing with most AI tools today.
I would agree with that. I don't know what's going on under the hood, but I think that there's a little bit of, like you said, expectation in that somebody says to ChatGPT, I'm asking for advice, blah, 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 just use the information I'm providing in this chat. But then it doesn't. It pulls from everywhere. And so they don't realize that. And it's like, wait, did you know, even if you tell it to do this thing, it may not do that. And you need to be aware of that.
Yeah, definitely. So well, I like the fact that you call out mental model first. So, like, one of the big things that we can do as user experience professionals is obviously mental models matter with all systems. Any interface that we interact with, users form a mental model of it. But particularly with AI forward experiences, given that they're generally newer, it's a little bit more important, maybe, than any average experience to deeply consider what type of mental model the user is maybe going to form based off interacting with this, and how you can design in a way such that it affords creating a more accurate representation of what the system does, so they can get more value out of whatever AI features are being put in front of them. I think that's a great example. Another that we talked about a little bit with when we were speaking about using AI and UX, another, I guess, element or consideration that's really important is adoption, right? I think a lot of folks kind of ignore the fact that the first people who are going to use any AI features or any AI experiences end up looking very different from the later folks who end up using it. And if you over index on early feedback, you're actually going to do a very poor job of designing for the later folks. For example, Jacob Nielsen actually does a pretty good job of criticizing certain image generators, AI image generators, because they had all these like kind of obtuse sounding ways that you could edit certain variables and the way that it would generate the image. And it wasn't really clear what they were, but there were these power users early. They loved them. And unfortunately, that made it so that they doubled down on all these like weird little levers and ways that you could adjust the image that don't really make much sense from a on the surface perspective. If you understand the technicality and what kind of strange language they're using to describe different, I guess, random variables and generating the image, then it makes sense to you. But if you're just a random person trying to go in and create an image of a dog wearing a tuxedo, it's a little bit less sensible. So understanding, even at the very highest level, that the adoption curve exists and who you're going to be speaking to early that's using these features is going to look different than the later folks, and what that might look like so you can better anticipate what future iterations should look like and should take into account for is another kind of key consideration where we're thinking about how we better design these experiences.
Yeah, that is so true. And it's so powerful. I don't know if this is true still, but AI tools right now are pretty much just English driven. They're not multi-language. So perfect bias right there. You need to know English to even use these tools. And I ran an experiment, talk about experimenting with images. I asked ChatGPT to create an image of me. I said, based on what you know about me, create an image. Now, keep in mind, I'm logged in with my Google account, which has a photo of me. So I assumed my mental model was it would pull from that, but it did not. It produced an image of a white male with glasses. That's what his setup was. And I was like, whoa, okay, not quite. And so then when I said I'm actually not a male, it produced an image of a woman with like kind of black curly hair, glasses still. I'm like, wow, okay, we're a little off, getting a little closer. I gave them that prompt and I said, hey, why don't you try this out? And it was interesting how someone who was a man, it would come back as a woman. Somebody who was white, it would come back as Asian. One person, she said, it did come back as a woman. She said, I have pink hair. Not only did it give her pink hair, it gave her a bigger chest too. And so it's baffling what the results can be. Sometimes you almost want to do it just for a laugh. And this is where I worry in that I can kind of take it with a grain of salt, but it's those who rely on it and believe it 100% is what's worrisome to me.
Yeah. I think that's great to stress test the tool just by playing around with it and asking it almost absurd questions like that and start to feel out like, okay, I'm getting into, if you want, dangerous territory here where it's going to give me something, whether it's useful at all, that's to be seen. But if you can start to get a feel for that just from, like I said, stress testing it, I think that helps us a lot as the user.
Exactly. And I thought this is the perfect way to test this easily. I think most people have a pretty decent idea of what they look like. So if you ask it, make an image of me and it comes back wrong, there's a little litmus right there. I have one more question for you about AI. And this is a question a lot of people have on their mind. I know you don't have a crystal ball, but do you think that AI is going to take over the UX researcher's job?
I mean, again, we're in a position of great uncertainty as far as what the possible outcomes are here. I'll confess my personal belief, which is that we're probably not going to get to artificial general intelligence and the machine god in the next couple of years. Could be wrong. There are people who are smarter than me who would disagree on that. I think that we are looking at something that's maybe a little bit more mature than what we currently have. Whatever comes next is still going to be based on this underlying, it's a database of the internet that's making predictions about text. No, I don't think that it's going to have the reasoning capability and the in reality that's really necessary for it to do a UX researcher's job from beginning to end.
Yeah.
Oh, do you have thoughts?
I'll ask you two questions up front, Ken. Do you think that it's likely that there will be digital experiences, different things that you interact with that are digital in nature, that people interact with in the next 5 years? Do you think 5 years from now we'll still interact with digital experiences?
Good question. I'm not the one predicting the future here, guys. That's
You just do a yes or no. That's all you got to do.
Yes. Oh, okay. This is the
Oh,
easy
yeah.
question.
This is just a binary.
okay.
You just record your judgment.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So there's that. All right. Cool. Do you think there will still be people in 5 years?
Ooh, good question. Let's go with yes on that one as well.
Okay. Okay, cool. I like those. Those are good. Good priors that I can base this off of. All right. So there'll be people. There will be technology that those people interact with. In spirit, something like UX, if not UX itself, would still be relevant, given both of those things and the interact, right? Do we call it UX? Maybe, maybe not. Does the actual day-to-day of a researcher, are there specific research roles? And does the day-to-day look the exact same? Maybe not, but I think generally the spirit of what it is that we do is still going to exist and might look different. But I just still feel that like that's a future that we get to be an active participant in creating. And so, yeah, there's going to be people interacting with technology. There's going to be folks who will help design it, assuming that Lawton's right about the fact that the big god of technology doesn't come along and just start designing the technology for itself or us, maybe. It might change. But I feel the spirit of what we all enjoy about what it do, which is human technology interaction, how to make it work, how to make it good, how to make it something that's actually enjoyable and not a drag on us. That still exists in some capacity. We might just focus on and execute our work in different ways.
That makes sense. And I think it kind of ties to Lawton, what you said earlier, is just there's so much change happening so quickly, and we don't know the result. We don't know the end, right? Everything could shift in a second, and all humans could be cut out of interacting with AI, and we have no control at all. I don't know what's going to happen, but you know what I mean. I never felt such dynamic, woo, wake up and everything's different from yesterday as I feel right now.
Yeah, we're in a very uncertain period in history in general. And yeah, assuming World War III doesn't happen, like people will probably be working with technology in the next few years.
Well, there's so much good stuff here. I'm going to make this into 3 parts. Let's go over and check out the next part of this interview with Thomas and Lawton.